we know with my co-panelists, we decided that so much of the conversation is vibrant, when we talk with you, that we're going to keep it all very brief. I'm going to confess to you a vulnerability when it comes to gender studies. I've never done gender studies in any formalized way, and I come from a country that would need a good dose of gender studies actually taught in junior school. So it's with a sense of awkwardness and a sense of inadequacy and ignorance that I approach any kind of gathering that has to do with gender studies. But what I can tell you is that from this background and the awareness on my own skin of the clear gender imbalance that exists in the field that I come from, which is architecture, and that I still see in the field where I work, which is museums and the communication of art, I can tell you that something needs to be done and that it's extremely important to have a network like this. And I would like to give you 4 or 5 completely disparate examples of cultural events in my life that really had an impact. There are more than 4 or 5, but these 4 or 5 are quite important. So a few years ago, I had the chance to meet Jackie Donnay. Jackie Donnay was a wonderful, she was one of these West Village communists. She was like a really Turkish, old-fashioned, intellectual lesbian, and she had a foundation that only gave money to women filmmakers, but my husband was able to convince her to give him some money. So my husband is that type of person. But anyway, Jackie Donnay was the producer for An American Family, the first reality TV show that was on PBS in the 1970s, the first time that somebody came out on TV live and so on and so forth. And more recently, in the 1990s, early 1990s, she did a fabulous documentary called Paving the Way that was about 5 women, actually 4 American women, that in the 1950s found themselves in very unlikely positions in society. One was a general of the Navy, another one was a congresswoman, another one was the dean of a science school in an Ivy League university, and I can't remember what the 4th did. But it was a very interesting situation of pre-feminism instead of post-feminism, when still there were very loud voices, in the tail end of the golden era of feminism. In the 1990s, there were still some voices, and there was this strange moment of change. And the display of that kind of argument, it's not about gender, it's about strength of character, resonated as both false and real at the same time, and really created more ambiguity than existed before. The second big episode instead happened only last week, and it's about ambiguity. Before my colleague was talking about hybrid and ambiguous especially is the dimension that we're going to live more and more in the future, and I think it's something that we should embrace. It's the ambiguity between physical and digital, it's the ambiguity among genders. But what I'm referring to is quite a beautiful story by Margaret Talbot in The New Yorker about transgender kids. And what I found incredibly interesting was the sense of freedom of choice, of children just deciding which gender they would like to be, and certain doctors and scientists prolonging the time of choice by not giving gender change hormones until there was like an awareness. It kind of reminded me of some atheist parents deciding not to baptize children until they could choose their own religion. But at the same time, there was a need to create all of these neologisms, all these different names to define male to female, transgender, female to men, and then when you are a female that wants to be with females. It was just like this amazing series of neologisms. So the need to be free, and at the same time the need to define in order to have a position in society that you can then leapfrog from. Quite interesting, because that happens at the same time as the book Lean In, which is renewing certain arguments that are at the same time feminist and instead post-feminist. So all of this different big melange in my head made me look at 4th event a program for women's studies at the Museum of Modern Art in a completely different light. Several of my colleagues started years ago, because of a benefactor, a woman benefactor, doing a big research on the presence of women artists in the collection. And the result of this research years later is a tome this thick that is quite amazing about women artists, and also recommendations for inclusion in the collection, recommendations for exhibitions. And we see happening right now, you know, the fruits of this program with so many retrospectives about women artists that you might have noticed at MoMA in the past 3 years, and that is going to go on. Truth is that even though we might like to think that everything is getting better and it's about individuals and not about gender, there's still a gigantic imbalance, even in the world of museums where so many of the actors are women. The truth is that at the directing levels, you know, especially in gigantic museums, there still are not enough women. And the great Anne Darnancourt, that died a few years ago and was the director of the Philadelphia Museum, was probably one of the few directors of the so-called universal, they used to be called encyclopedic museums, that we have. And it goes to explain this particular issue, the fact that I was recently at a very big conference, you know, the World Economic Forum in Davos, and there was a panel about encyclopedic museum, and the panel was 5 white men with a white, not so white, he was from Alexandria, Egypt. So, you know, but anyway, he was the commentator. And so I went to one of the 5 directors, Tom Campbell from the Met, and I told him, Tom, you gotta help me here because I don't want to come out as the usual bitch. And he said, yeah, what's the problem? I said, either I say it or you say it, that it is quite outrageous that encyclopedic, universal, global is represented by 5 white men. And he was like a great sport, and very elegantly he spoke about it. But you see, I think that we have to continue, not only within our network, but also on the outside, we have to continue speaking about it. And just today I got a petition that I'm going to circulate from the Harvard Graduate School of Design. They want to petition the Pritzker Prize, who gave Robert Venturi years ago the Pritzker Prize. They want to petition them to add Denise Scott Brown, who was so instrumental in making him the Pritzker Prize that he was, to add Denise Scott Brown to the roster. Too little, too late, maybe, and it's almost offensive, but you know what? We still need to keep on doing this, and this network, I'm sure, will help us in this endeavor. Thank you.
I have a short presentation.